we have a very special guest with us today because we're going to be talking all about mindfulness and the benefits of mindfulness when it comes to your health, your relationships, your career, the amount of money you make, all of those things, but also the way that we use mindfulness in order to reduce stress in our life. As we know, this is a very stressful time for some people. Some people have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. Some people have lost loved ones because of the pandemic. And whatever else you might have going on in life, stress is just a natural factor. But just because it's a natural factor doesn't mean that we have to live there. It doesn't mean that we can't live in a beautiful state, even around all of these different stressors. And our guest today is going to tell us all about that. And her name is Julieane Cooley. Julieane has been practicing mindfulness for over 15 years. She believes that it is a practical and easy tool to use to improve your peace of mind, reduce stress, and help your health. Julie was a Dharma teacher for the Buddhist Faith Fellowship in Connecticut for over 5 years, and she has led a multitude of classes and workshops, including Pain is Inevitable, Suffering is Optional. Julie has led several mindfulness presentations for Travelers Insurance, and she has been a Toastmaster of 8.5 years and speaks about helping people with chronic illness reclaim their life. Julie, we know each other from Toastmasters. We know each other coincidentally from the National Speakers Association. And I just got to say, it's an absolute honor to come full circle and to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share mindfulness with your listeners.
The pleasure is ours. Pleasure is ours. So for those listening who are brand new to mindfulness, or they've heard this and they think it's like woo-woo, they think it's like out there stuff, could you just give like a little description of what mindfulness is for somebody who might be brand new to this topic?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is actually quite simple, but not easy to do. Mindfulness just means being in the present moment. Unfortunately, we all tend to have thoughts all day, every day, and not always concentrate on the task at hand and what we're doing in the moment. And so mindfulness is just bringing our thoughts back to exactly what we're doing right here, right now.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's riff off of that present moment idea. So if we think about the different options that we have to reflect on or to be in, we've got the past, we've got the present, which is this moment happening right now, which is our only moment, and we have the future. So those who aren't practicing mindfulness consciously, where do you find, based on your studies and experiences, where do you find that most people tend to live? In what moment?
It really depends on the person. So the past is about depression and regret. You know, I wish I had done that. I should be further along right now. You know, ruminating about what happened yesterday, maybe a fight with your spouse or some work troubles, or I wish I hadn't said that. And the future is anxiety. So fear, which is false evidence appearing real, many of us were like, oh my God, I'm going to be homeless, or I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, or even things like I need to go grocery shopping later, or what am I doing, tonight? So it really depends on the person, but most of us live either in the past or the future. And it's honestly very hard to live in the present moment. And that's why mindfulness needs to be a practice. It's not a destination, it's the journey, because very few people, even people who have been practicing for decades, can be in the present moment for a long period of time. Even Pema Chodron, who is a Buddhist nun, and she's been practicing this for decades, she says if she can be in the present moment for 30 seconds, it's a good practice.
I love that. And I aspire to be similar to those individuals who are able to stay in the present moment. And I like to think that I've gotten a little bit better at it. This is something new that I've discovered as of like the past year, maybe 2 years at most, from people like Rhonda Byrne, from her book called The Greatest Secret, from books from people like Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, about being in the present moment. Because let me tell you, Julie, out of 24 hours, I probably spend maybe 30 minutes in the present moment. And it's a really scary thing. And that's an improvement for me, because I'll be having a rough day, or I'll be thinking of, like you said, things in the future, which gives me that feeling of anxiety. And I'll think to myself, well, is this really affecting me right now? Is this affecting me in this moment? And it brings me back to the present moment. And it makes me think, okay, well, why was I just worried? Everything now is is fine. So what is it about this present moment that causes us to literally, it feels like those disempowering emotions are like washing away from our body, right? Like, what is it about the present that inspires that feeling?
Because you're focused and your thoughts aren't all over the place. And it's nobody's fault. It's just how the brain is wired. It's a protective mechanism. And I'm sure everybody's heard of fight or flight. And now there's freeze too. And fawning is the new thing that our brains do. The brain's trying to protect us. So if you're in the past, you're trying to change things and you're trying to protect yourself that way. In the future, you think you have the sense of control if you worry. And that's actually the opposite, because worry is the most useless emotion there is. However, we all do it, and we're all actually programmed to do it. And if you watch your thoughts, you'll see that it's programming. Your thoughts aren't you. So I was teaching a class on mindfulness years ago, and one of my students couldn't get that concept. He's like, of course my thoughts are mine. They're in my head. They have to be mine. But if you really watch them, you'll see, oh, that my mom's told me that. Oh, my dad told me that. My teacher in second grade told me that. Most of your thoughts and most of that running program in your head is because of what other people told you. It's not you. And once you can realize that, you can detach from it and just kind of watch it go like clouds or a river and just not get caught up in the story. So what gives the present moment that power is you're not buying into that story anymore. You're just really in the zone. And a lot of musicians and athletes practice mindfulness of when they're playing because they're in that zone. I find that when I'm working, I'm in that zone because I'm concentrating on what I'm doing. I don't have those thoughts running. And when you don't have those thoughts running, then you don't have that extra stress, that extra worry, anxiety, depression, because you're not repeating those same old stories and patterns over and over again. And that's what gives the present moment power, is because you're detaching from all that programming and detaching from all those stories.
You just said so many awesome, you just dropped a lot of knowledge bombs here. And I want to touch on a few different things. That idea of you are not your thoughts. I know there's a lot of people listening where that's a new concept, because it was for me just a couple years ago where I heard that. And I thought to myself, well, if we aren't our thoughts, then what are we? Like, we have these thoughts throughout the day of, I am not enough, or even like positive thoughts such as like, I'm the man, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to do whatever it takes. But then we just sit at home sometimes and we're like, that thing that I said earlier, was that the right thing to say in that situation? This project I have coming up, what if it messes up? What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? So those ideas that come into our head, those are our thoughts. So if we aren't our thoughts, then who would you say we are?
Well, my belief is we're all spirits, pure love in the beginning. If you look at babies and little kids, if you have little kids of your own or nieces, nephews, grandchildren, watch them if they're under the age of 3. They are always in the present moment because their programming hasn't started yet. They haven't sponged those stories that they're going to. And they might throw a tantrum, but they let it go. And 5 minutes later, they're happy. So they're very much in the moment. Ooh, there's a butterfly. Ooh, there's a ladybug. They're a joy to watch. Unfortunately, about the age of 3 is when they start caring about what other people think, because their survival depends on their parents. So they want to be good little boys and girls, and they don't want to be yelled at, and they want to behave because that's how they get fed. That's how they get taken care of. They have to please their caregivers. So then at the age of 3, they start sponging that information. Then they're sent to school and they want to get good grades and they want to please their peers and they want to please their teachers. So all of that programming starts sponging into their brains, and you'll see the difference. And they're no longer in the present moment, unfortunately. And they start really having that programming. I mean, did you ever have a teacher who told you couldn't do something? Like, oh, you have an awful voice and you never sing again. You start letting other people's opinions affect you. And unfortunately, then that's when you start identifying with those thoughts and you think they're your own. But really, we're all beautiful spirits underneath all that programming. And I always say it takes you 20 years to get messed up with the programming, and it takes you the rest of your life to undo it, which kind of is a shame. But at the same time, it makes you stronger and it makes you more powerful once you realize, hey, that's not me. And I get to decide who I am now. I don't have to identify with those. And it's a process. Again, it is work. It is saying, okay, wait a minute, that thought's not me. And I can do what I want to do. If somebody told me I was a horrible athlete when I was a kid, well, maybe that I don't have to take that on now. And maybe I can have fun doing sports. Or, the teacher told me I was a terrible singer. Well, who cares? Let me sing now and let me sing for my own pleasure. So it's about reclaiming our own power.
That concept of we are pure love, and that concept of, when we're children, we don't have that programming, right? And we tend to look at especially young children, babies, and we think to ourselves, wow, they're just so innocent. Like, they're just full of love. They're so full of joy. Like, even when they cry, it's for a purpose, right? It's to get fed, or it's to get attention that they're not getting, whatever it might be. But then we grow up, and it's almost like what you said. We kind of assume all these different ideas and roles from the people we spend time around, from our parents, our friends. And it's like we put a mask on, in a sense. And it's like a mask of what's the word I'm looking for? It's the mask of the opposite of being genuine. Like, it's not who we are, right? We put on a facade, we put on a performance. And I guess my question for you would be, are there any benefits to having our thoughts and being in the past or being in the future? Are there any benefits to wearing that mask that we tend to walk through life with?
Well, society requires us to do so. I mean, we can't be like a 2-year-old and throw a tantrum on the bus or throw a tantrum at work. That would endanger us. We would get fired. So you have to have somewhat of a mask. I mean, think of jobs in the corporate world. You can't always be genuine. I mean, they tell you now, bring your real self to work. And you can do that to a point, but you can't. I mean, if you get yelled at by your boss, you can't just be in tears, or you can't yell back like a little kid would. It's acceptable if a 2-year-old yells back at you, but you do that to your boss, and there's going to be consequences. And there's consequences in relationships. You have to think before you speak. And that's where mindfulness can really help us too, is it helps us respond versus react. So yeah, little kids are great in that they're very genuine, they're in the present moment, but they're not always the best. They might say some things that, an adult would regret. Like, I hate you, mommy. You don't want to say that to your spouse or, to your kids when you're upset. So yes, it helps us to have those thoughts and to have that wisdom. It's not that thoughts are bad. They're not. It's just we don't want to identify with them and think that's who we are, because a lot of that is, as you said, I'm not enough. I stink at this, or how could I do that? Or I'm so stupid. And that's not the case at all. That's what you want to disidentify with. Thoughts are there to protect us. I mean, you want to think if you're in a car and you're driving and somebody cuts you off, you need to think to slam on the brake or to get out of the way. So thoughts are there to help us survive. It's just we don't want to get caught up in them and think that's who we are, especially when it's the negative and even the positive. Because, even thinking you're all that or that you're better than somebody else is not the truth either, because we all have value. So it's about realizing your true nature. And I think one of the best ways to do that is think about, what was I like when I was little? Before all this started, what did I love? Who was I? And that helps take down the mask. But we do need that mask to survive in society, unfortunately.
Well said. Thanks for going deep into that. It sounds like from what you said, our goal is to be in the present, because that's where we'll find this joy and this fulfillment. But at the same time, we want to use our thoughts as a tool to help us in situations where we might need them. So you're extremely well versed on this topic, obviously, because you're an expert in it. You've been doing this for 15 years now, practicing mindfulness. What led you into that world. How did you discover the world of mindfulness? Because especially back then, this was not a mainstream concept. How did you find it? And what differences and positive improvements has it helped you to make in your own life?
Well, I found it because I joined a Buddhist group about 15 years ago. It was the Buddhist Faith Fellowship of Connecticut. And I was looking for a spiritual group. I didn't tie myself into any specific religion. I wanted to find something a little more general that I could find spirituality, but not with all the dogma and all the rules that some religions tend to have. And part of Buddhism is meditation. And in the Buddhist group that I was in, it was 20 minutes of meditation, which was torture. I hated it in the beginning, absolutely hated it, because 20 minutes is a lot when you're just trying to be quiet and not move. And I would find that's my time to drink my water. And that was my time to go to the bathroom, and my legs would ache. And honestly, I was really bad at it. Or, I judge myself for it. And it was really, really hard for me. And one of the members of the group said, "Oh, Julie, it took me 10 years to learn how to meditate." And I'm like, 10 years? Oh my God, that's such a long time. But honestly, it took me that long too. So it wasn't until work got a little chaotic and I was having some troubles, and I'm like, I'm going to do this mindfulness thing. And every morning, 5 minutes of meditation. And it helped me so much. It helped me detach, helped me not to take things personally, helped me to respond versus react to situations. But it takes time. And in this society, we want instant fixes. We want a pill to fix our health. We want magic solutions. And unfortunately, it took us a long time to get to this point. It's going to take us a while to be able to heal it too. But the great thing about mindfulness meditation is it only takes 5 minutes a day. You don't have to spend an hour a day. You don't have to spend 20 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, will help you tremendously. But the important thing is to be consistent with the practice. 5 minutes once a week is not going to help. If you miss a day, don't judge yourself. Just go back to it. Just keep coming back to the practice. And it is a practice, and it's honestly a lifelong practice. But the more you do it, the more you will see the benefits. And you'll be like, oh, that would have ticked me off, a year ago. And now it doesn't bother me anymore. So that's the benefits. You'll become calmer. You'll be able to, what you said earlier in the session, is even if worldwide events are crazy, which they certainly have been and are currently, you can still have your center and you can still find joy, and you don't let outside factors affect you as much. And that's the beauty of the practice.
Wow, so interesting. So you joined this Buddhist group, and I know my terminology is not the best here, but 15 years ago, you tried it, you started doing it, it was very difficult. And then you had a catalyst in your life that made you say to yourself, I'm going to try something different. So you went back to meditation. Where did the idea of 5 minutes a day come from? Before we dive into what that looks like and how everyone can implement it, where did 5 minutes come from? Because you mentioned 20 at the beginning.
Well, 20 was part of the group. So it was actually part of their ceremony, is they would have you sit there for 20 minutes every Sunday morning. So that was part of the services. Just like when you go to church, you have certain rituals. That was the Buddhist ritual. 20 minutes, I think, is too tough to start with. I mean, even if you start with 1 minute, it will still do you good. It's kind of just getting you in there. 5 minutes was just read books on it, and then it said just start 5 minutes a day. Just start with a little bit of it, and if you want to build up, fantastic. If you don't, honestly, 5 minutes a day works. So you can do that. And there's some wonderful apps out there that you can use to time too. So in the beginning, they didn't have apps 15 years ago for mindfulness. So it would be like looking at the clock. And trust me, even 5 minutes of quiet meditation can seem like forever when you're first starting it. So use Insight Timer or Calm or Headspace, whatever you want to use. My favorite is Insight Timer because it's free, and they have thousands of free guided meditations that you can use. But just set the bell and just sit. And if you have to start with 1 minute, start with 1 minute. Toastmasters magazine used a wonderful terminology that I love called snackify. And it helps when you're doing certain things in your life to just do a little bit at a time, because you trick your mind. If you tell your mind, you're going to sit here for 45 minutes, your mind's going to be like, heck no, I'm not going to do that. And your practice is going to fail. But if you say, I'm going to sit here for 1 minute, your mind's like, oh, I can handle a minute. And you kind of trick it. And you do a minute a day, and then you up it to 2, and you up it to 3, and you just keep upping it. And honestly, once you do that, you're going to crave it, because our minds need silence. Our minds need that quiet. And we don't have that in today's world. You've got emails and texts and phone calls and things coming at you all hours of the day. I mean, news used to be when, we're little kids, 6 in the morning and at night. Now you get news 24/7, and it's just too much stimulus. Your mind actually needs this, and it doesn't even know it needs it. But when you start practicing it, you're going to start craving it.
Julie, I'll have moments of downtime during my day, and downtime isn't really even downtime, because you're still projecting and you're still thinking about what's happening, what's going wrong, what you need to plan for, looking at my calendar, to the point where my phone will be next to me. And if I'm not on it, I'll literally look at it and pick it up like subconsciously, and I'll unlock it, and I'll even go to apps like Facebook and start scrolling through. And it'll be like 15 seconds into doing it where I'll say to myself, literally at this point, I'm like, whoa. And I turn the phone off immediately and I put it down, and I make myself sit there and just look around me, right? I'll just look around. I'll ground myself in a way by just looking at my hands, feeling what's around me, feeling myself in the chair or standing on the ground, whatever it might be. But I'll ground myself in reality, and that's part of like the 30 minutes that I'm actually present in my day. And I think 30 minutes might even be pretty generous with that, because it's really even less. So someone listening now, they're sold, Julie. They're like, I'm gonna do this 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes, right? I'll wake up 5 minutes earlier, whatever it takes. I want less stress. I want more success in my career, which we'll get to in a bit. I want all these benefits you're talking about, because 5 minutes a day can create this avalanche of positive benefits and improvements. So how we wake up, right? And now our 5 minute time slot is here. It's time to meditate, which I think is a scary word for a lot of people. Like, they think of getting in the position, putting their hands out, and like that's what people are thinking. That's what I used to think. So what is Joe, who's brand new to mindfulness and meditation? What does that 5 minutes look like?
Well, as I said, you can go to an app like Insight Timer, just set the time and just sit. That's really all mindfulness meditation is. And there's different types, which I'll get into in a moment. But you can just sit and breathe, and it's not if your mind will wander, it is when your mind will wander. There's no if about it. As soon as you catch your mind wandering, don't judge yourself. That's really important. Non-judgment, because everybody's mind wanders. This is hard for everybody. Just bring your thoughts back to the present moment. And when you start meditation, it might be helpful to have an anchor. And you can use an anchor like counting to 10. So you inhale for 1, you exhale for 2, you inhale for 3, you exhale for 4, up until 10. And then you count backwards. If you notice your mind wander, start over again at 1. It helps in the beginning to have some kind of anchor. You could also use a word as an anchor, like peace or love. Some people use Sanskrit, like you were saying, Om. And the reason people do that is because it has no charge. English words can have a charge to it, even beautiful words like peace and love. So if you want something without a charge, just to keep anchoring your mind, you can use something like Om or Om Shanti, just to keep the mind focused. There are many different types of meditation, and different people resonate with different types. There's walking meditation. So you could walk downstairs and just concentrate on your footsteps. So right foot, inhale, left foot, exhale. You could even, if you didn't have the 5 minutes, you're going crazy in the morning, you're trying to get the kids ready, you're like, I don't even have 5 minutes. When you're eating, don't watch TV. just eat, just savor what you're eating. There's many different forms of mindfulness meditation. If you have a hobby that you're really into, like you're a musician or you love playing sports, when you're in there, they call it in the zone. Just focus on what you're doing. That's mindfulness meditation. You don't even need to just sit. I mean, I think personally, I think it's necessary to quiet the mind, but you could even do it while you're doing your favorite hobby or reading a book. It's just being focused. That's what it means.
Focusing on the moment now. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like you just said, walking, being conscious of your breath. Something that you said that I actually started doing myself a couple years back is not every time, but a lot of times I make an effort to do this. When I'm eating food, I will put my phone down and I will turn the TV off. And we just moved into a new home. So I'm outside on our porch, eating outside and just taking bites. And it sounds crazy and it sounds like new age to say this, but think about us think about our ancestors when we were on the savannah, right? And we're traveling, we're hunting, we're gathering, we're with our tribe. We didn't have television or distractions or anything that would take our attention off of the moment. Now, I guess maybe thoughts of predators coming in and attacking us, other enemy tribes people, but most of the time I feel that our ancestors were very present. So they didn't have things to watch as they were eating their meal. They ate with appreciation and they ate with gratitude. And I read a book that it wasn't titled about mindfulness because I think that scares people. I think even the title of this interview might scare some people. And I hope it brings some new people into the mix because this has really helped me change my life. And I'm still like not even an amateur. Like I'm getting to the amateur level of this. But I read the book and Rhonda Byrne says, when you're eating your food, before you take the first bite, just look at it. Be appreciative that this food even exists in front of you. And she talks about sprinkling gratitude salt onto the food. And it sounds so weird. And I still do this. I do it just to make my wife angry. Not angry, but she's like, what are you doing over there? Are you doing that weird salt thing? And I'll literally sprinkle salt of gratitude onto my food. And with every bite that I take, the more grateful I feel because everything is metaphorical in a sense, right? So what I gathered from you is attempt to be conscious throughout your day of what's actually happening in this present moment. And I have a couple questions. One question I have for you is, what if the present moment isn't an enjoyable experience? What if we just got broken up with? What if we just got demoted? Or what if we just got fired or we lost a loved one? It's really painful to be in the present moment in those situations. So what would you recommend for someone who says, Julie, how can I do this when the present moment is so painful for me?
Well, unfortunately, pain is inevitable. We're all going to have pain, and it's still important to be in the present moment with the pain because too many of us want pleasure and when we want to push away pain, and it makes sense. I mean, pain's not fun. But the problem is when we push pain away and we don't experience it, we store it in the body. And when we store it in the body, it's going to come to bite us later on. So if you store it in the body, then years later you could be chronically ill, or it could cause a heart attack, an acute illness, and it definitely causes tight muscles and pain. So you want, like that 2-year-old who has a tantrum, or they fell and they skinned their knee. What do? They cry it out. It's not fun, but they release it. They experience the pain. We need to do the same too. And I think society tries to have us numb the pain. Watch TV, go shopping, have an addiction, have some alcohol, anything to numb the pain. But we have to feel it. And there are many spiritual teachers who will say, if you feel it, you can heal it. So you have to feel the pain. And no, it's not pleasant. Meditation is honestly it's not about pleasant. It's about experiencing what is and then let it go. Just like pleasure, you don't want to grasp on it to who already either, because then it's going to go through your fingers and it's going to be let go too. So it's about experiencing the moment as is, not if it's joyful, not if it's sad, just whatever is here, experience it. And if you had the breakup, that's in the past. It's your emotions that you're processing in the present. If you lost your job, that happened already. It's processing the feelings. And everybody processes things differently. There are some people who lose a job and say, well, there's something out there better for me. That's why I lost it. So that's where mindfulness meditation can help you too. It's not to take pain away, but sometimes to reframe it. If you had a breakup, maybe 5 years from now, you find somebody else and you're like, you know what? That breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me because I wouldn't have found this person if I hadn't broken up. It's all about reframing too. There's a famous Taoist story that goes through all these different trials and tribulations. So there's a gentleman who lost his horse, and his neighbors say, "Oh, that's so horrible. You lost your horse." And he's like, "We'll see." The horse brought back 5 more horses. They're like, "Oh, you're so lucky. Now you have 5 horses." He's like, "We'll see." Then his son was riding the horse and he fell off and broke his ankle. And they're like, "Oh, that's so horrible. Your son broke his ankle." "We'll see." Then they went to conscript all the young men in the village to go to war, but his son couldn't be conscripted because he broke his ankle. "Oh, that's fantastic. Now your son doesn't have to go to war. We'll see." So we can't always tell in the moment, what this is going to mean for us, but we can kind of reframe it and just have faith that if something happened, there's something out there better for us. So if you lost a job, well, now focus on manifesting even a better job for you. And I know you talk a lot about the law of attraction. So it's not to say that it's not painful and scary. Absolutely it is. But feel those feelings, let it go, and have faith that something even better is on the way for you. But you have to process those feelings first, because if you stuff them down like a lot of us tend to, it will come up in opportune times and not in a way you're going to like.
Thanks for sharing that story. That's super powerful. I love the idea of the horse left, it brought back more. The son fell off the horse, broke his ankle, but then that prevented him from going to war. That's huge. And it makes me think a lot of the saying, everything happens for a reason. And some people agree with that. Some people don't agree with that. And I think personally, I do. I believe that everything happens for a reason, but more importantly, like what you said, everything happens for us. When something happens to us, it's really helping us prepare for what's about to come next. Would you say that you personally believe in fate? Do you believe that everything does happen for a reason?
I do, but that can be kind of callous to like somebody who lost a loved one or something like that. So we have to kind of temper it, especially during the time of COVID, where people are losing people and they say, "Well, I lost my spouse. How can you say that was for a reason?" So it's hard, in certain situations to really believe that. So I think we kind of have to temper it in the situation. For most situations, I do believe things happen for a reason. If you lost your job, there's something out there better for you. If you want to be self-employed, maybe this is your time to take it. If you lost a relationship, I think there's something better for you. At the same time, there's things I don't understand. I lost a dear friend earlier this year, and she was young, and I don't even know why she passed away, and that I don't understand. And I can't say that that everything happens for a reason. I have to believe that maybe it was her time to go, but it's very hard when things like that happen for us to justify it. So when we lose loved ones, it's okay to grieve. I wouldn't say, well, that was for the best. No, of course it wasn't. I mean, I do believe that they're in a better place. It's the people they leave behind that's hard. But there are things that in life that are really hard to tell. I mean, if you lost a child, God forbid, or you lost a spouse, to say that that happened for a reason, maybe it did, because maybe now you're going to go to bat for whatever reason your child did, but it still doesn't lessen the pain. And unfortunately, again, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You're going to have pain in your life. It's up to you to attribute that reason if you can. When you can, try to reframe it. If you can't, grieve it. It's important to grieve. And unfortunately, that is part of life, is grieving.
Yeah, thanks for going deeper into that too, because I'm sure there was someone who might have been thinking that, like, well, this thing happened. How can that happen for a reason? So I absolutely agree with you. Curiously speaking, when we're meditating or in the present moment and all these thoughts are coming in, some thoughts we observe And we think to ourselves, wow, why did I even have that thought? That's not even like who I am. That's not what I believe. That's not what I normally think. So why would I even have that thought enter my mind? Like this happens to me on the daily and I'm becoming a lot more conscious of it before I say things. I have a thought come in and before I say it, I'm like, why would I think that? I'm not going to say that. That's not who I am. That's not what I believe. So because these thoughts are so random and sporadic and they're always coming in, how is it? What do you believe thoughts are? Where do you believe thoughts come from? What are they? I'm just curious. I know obviously we don't know the answer to this question, but what do you believe?
It's programming. Thoughts, it's what you intake. Think of how much information is coming at you at all times from your people you live with, from people you're surrounded by, your coworkers, your boss, the people you interact with on a daily basis, to the news, to your friends on Facebook and social media. You've got all this information coming at you at all times. It's programming. And I believe this, and some people do too, ancestral. It passes on from your ancestors. So it might not be your thoughts. There's a lot of spiritual teachers that think that you inherit the trauma that your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents went through. It's cellular. So some of those thoughts that you might be experiencing, either you subconsciously might have picked them up from news or something that you imbibed that's surrounding you, or it could be programming from the past, because as I said, they do believe that your ancestors are with you at a cellular level. So it's important to realize that this isn't me, this isn't my thought, and when that comes up, just detach. We think that we have to follow every thought stream that comes to us, and we don't. So that's what meditation will help teach you is, thinking, that's just a thought, let it go, rather than following the story. One of the sound healers that I love, Tom Kenyon, says, you don't believe what I say? Just put it in an invisible box and close the lid. So I find that helps. So if you have a thought, you're like, where did that come from? That's not me. Rather than following it down the rabbit hole and keep thinking about it, like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. I thought about this. That's not me. Put it in that invisible box, because it's not you. It's our actions that matter. It's our responses that matter. We all have less than desirable thoughts, but we don't know because we don't share them. So we all think, oh my God, I had the thought of doing such and such. I'm such a terrible person. No, you're not. So just let that thought go, put it in the invisible box, and don't think about it again. And if it comes up again, that invisible box can hold as many thoughts as you need to put in there.
Oh, that's okay. So let's take that. And I'm curious, how can we change? Is that how we change our programming? By putting it in the invisible box of being conscious, of practicing mindfulness? Are we changing our programming in the process of mindfulness? Or is there something else we can do in order to help change our programming? Or is it inevitable based on ancestry and what you mentioned before?
Oh, it's definitely not inevitable. As we said earlier in the program, that you spend 20 years getting programmed and you spend the rest of your life getting unprogrammed. So you can definitely reprogram. And there's many different ways to do it. The subconscious is very powerful. So it's really important what you feed your mind. And too many of us, especially during times of COVID or crisis, like back with the economic collapse in 2008, what do people do? They want information because they want some semblance of control. So they feed themselves the news. And that's the worst thing you could do. Feed yourself positivity. Listen to music that makes you joyful. Read. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't read anymore. So read what makes, it's going to lift your spirits. Listen to positive podcasts like Be Better.
Here we are.
Yes, here we are. So listen to positive podcasts. Listen to positivity. And that's how you reprogram your mind, because your mind's going to take that in. And again, it's going to take time. It's not going to be like, oh, well, I listened to Brandon once, so I'm going to be positive for the rest of my life. No, it's constant positivity, and it's from multiple sources. It's not going to work just from podcasts or just by reading one book. Just surround yourself constantly with what makes you joyful and what resonates with you. And the more you do that, the more you'll find, hey, this doesn't affect me as much, or I'm not thinking those negative thoughts. It's programming the subconscious. And there's a lot of products out there. A Clubhouse has a law of attraction room. There are a lot of resources out there for you. There's yes, old school CDs, but there's streaming that you can actually play while you're sleeping of affirmations. So it depends what works for you. Just try different things, and whatever resonates with you, that's what you want to use, and that's what you want to surround yourself with. So absolutely, you can reframe and reprogram. So things that we might say that are, quote, negative, try to reframe it into a more positive. What can I learn from this? What is this doing for me, rather than why me, and what is this doing to me? What can I learn from this? Because I believe everything's a lesson, and that you can learn from almost everything that happens to you. So examine it and say, hey, this might be making me stronger, or this might be making me healthier, and it might not feel good right now, but in the future, this is going to have a really positive effect on my life.
So incredible. You have a beautiful soul, Julie, to have gone through this journey of yours, for bringing us these tips. I love what you said about feeding your mind, because when I first began to change my programming that had been built up for over 20 years, 21 years, actually, I started watching videos of people that I looked up to, like Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, and every single day on the way to work, while I was around the house, while I was around the apartment, even when I was in the car with friends or my wife, who was my fiance at the time, I would play these videos and I would listen to the same thing even over and over and over. And I would replay it, like The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I read the book. I listened to the book over and over and over. And that's really what the turning point of my life was, when I started feeding my mind new programming. And I'm really happy that you brought that up, because if we can change our programming, we can change our life. But not just that, if we can be conscious of this present moment that we're in right now, even just by giving these 5 minutes every single day to be conscious, to put our phone away, the difference that you've spoke about is astronomical. And it's not really known until you start doing it. How quickly can someone begin to reap the benefits of mindfulness and this 5-minute practice?
I think that really depends on person by person. There's no prescription for it. I can't promise you practice it for a month and your life's going to improve. And it's incremental progress. And you have to realize that I think it has some self-reflection to it. And one day it's going to occur to you and you're like, wait a minute, I would have gotten really upset about that, and now it doesn't bother me. So it's going to involve some reflection, and you will see incremental progress. And that incremental progress will make a tremendous difference. You just need to have that consistency. So you can't say, all right, you practice it for a week and your life is perfect now. It's a lifelong journey, but you will see differences. You're like, oh, wow, I'm not getting sick as often. Or that's not stressing me out. That if that person had said that to me a couple of months ago, I would have been really hurt and ruminating all day. And now it doesn't bother me. So if you do that self-reflection, you will find in time that you'll have that. I think if you do the deep breathing, though, you will notice pretty quickly some improvements on your stress. And just it's important to observe. So when we tend to get stressed, we tend to clench, we tend to resist. So it's just observing. And again, not judging, really important not to judge, because everybody has this. It's just breathe through it. And I think if you do that, you can feel immediate de-stressing after that 5 minutes. But to see the real huge differences in career, health, relationships, that's going to take time, because it took time for you to be programmed. It took time for you to learn what stress was. It's going to take time for you to change that behavior. But we lead mindfulness meditation in my company, and people will say after 10 minutes, they feel so much more relaxed. So if you do take that time during the day, you will notice just by practicing that day, oh, I'm relaxed. Now you might get stressed 20 minutes later. Can't promise you won't. But by doing it more and more, then that stress won't affect you as soon as it used to.
Absolutely love that. And for everyone listening, what I want you to do is go in the comments and post your experience with mindfulness. Post how it's helped you. Post how maybe you haven't started it, you haven't heard of it until now. We've got people like Christy Farley right now in the comments who says, beautiful explanation, Julie. So she loves your explanation. She says, start with 5 minutes a day, consistently without judgment. And she commits to having silence on her schedule every single day. Christy, that's absolutely incredible. I'm glad you took a lot away from this. We got a lot of people in the comments right now, Julie, who are just they're going nuts. This is something that's not taught, right? School doesn't teach us about this. Our parents don't know about this because they weren't taught. My final question before I ask you where we can find you and what resources you'd recommend for us is, why do you believe that mindfulness isn't taught in our Western educational system? Why wasn't this taught in elementary school? Why wasn't this like taught even before school began to young children who don't have as much programming built up? But why are we just waiting until now from experts like yourself when it comes to mindfulness?
Well, because as you said in the beginning, mindfulness is associated with woo-woo and Eastern religion. And I think some parents might have a hard time not understanding what it was. And religion is separate from the school system. There is a saying that if mindfulness was taught to every 8-year-old, violence would disappear in one generation.
Wow.
That's how powerful it is. And some schools are starting to adopt mindfulness meditation, but you have to have parental support. You have to have parents asking for it. You have to have the right people asking for it. And they have to understand that it has nothing to do with any religion. Even though meditation is associated with Buddhism and Hinduism, it has nothing to do with it. You can be any religion, no religion. You don't have to have any belief to just sit quietly. So, and it also just started coming to the West in the 70s. So the Beatles brought a lot of mindfulness and yoga to the West, and we didn't know about it. So it's relatively new if you think it's only been here for the last 50 years. I'm hoping that meditation will make it into the school systems. I have seen in Connecticut, there's been some people who have brought it into the school systems. I'm hoping that they'll start seeing it as a necessity, just like other exercises. And I do want to point that out, and I know that you posted it as a resource. You can also do mindfulness while exercising. Yoga, Qigong, and Qigong has been my saving grace during COVID. So Brandon had posted a resource for Lee Holden's emergency immunity kit in the summary of this program. So please access that. Full disclosure, you'll probably end up on Lee's mailing list. If you don't want to, you can always unsubscribe, but I highly recommend it. He has a routine for immunity, for reducing anxiety, and for better breathing. And I have to tell you, I do Qigong 20 minutes every morning before work, and I get up at 5:15 just to do that because it's so important for me to have that right mindset. And I do that along with my 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation. And if I skip it, I can't skip a day. I mean, with everything that's been going on, it's a necessity. So definitely check out those free resources, because especially in times like this, you need all the tools you can get to help keep you centered. But I'm hoping that, with time and as more people experience these benefits, that they'll go to bat and they'll go to their Board of Education and say, hey, I want my kids to have mindfulness meditation. If parents go to bat for it, then I think it can be in the school system. But because it was associated with religion, and you probably would have had some parents object to it, that's probably why it wasn't there. But even in the corporate world, we're trying to maybe start your meetings with 1 minute of mindfulness meditation. So you could even try to bring it into your work. Ask your boss, show them this podcast, or give them some resources or a short article with the benefits of mindfulness, and say, hey, your folks will be more focused on what we're talking about. Their minds won't wander during meetings quite as much. Can we start with 1 minute of mindfulness meditation? But you have to keep asking, you have to keep suggesting to change culture, and you have to get the right people on your side.
Well said. I think there's so many different things that we can do. I think what we're doing right now is a great step in that direction. We didn't really have shows back in the day where, I mean, we didn't have this where we could go live and talk about these concepts and actually help people to start implementing them. I think with mindfulness, it becomes very convoluted. It becomes very difficult for people to wrap their head around, but you don't need to know exactly how something is working in order to start taking advantage of it and using it. You can literally start with 1 minute a day and then take it to 2 minutes the next week and then 3 minutes. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think once you start doing it for a minute, 2 minutes, you'll probably even begin to go longer. Like, do you find yourself spending even more time in the morning sometimes?
Well, for me, I do the 5 minutes because I also do Qigong, and Qigong is a different type of meditation. So it's like a half hour. So even when doing Qigong, I try to stay in the present moment. Mind will wander, bring it back. Mind will wander, bring it back. It's a constant, I hate to use the word battle, but it is. It's a tug of war with your mind. Your mind's like, no, I don't want to do this because it's not natural for it. It's going to be like a little kid throwing a tantrum. No, I want to think about what I need to do later in the day and just bring it back. Don't judge. Bring it back. So yes, I do the Qigong for 20 minutes. Then I love listening to sound healing. So I'll do sound healing for 5 minutes, just listen to some sound healing. And then I'll do 5 minutes of quiet meditation. So to find out what works for you, there's so many different types. It doesn't have to be one way. If you like walking meditation, going out in nature. So if you like taking a walk first thing in the morning or a walk at lunch, that's a perfect time to do mindfulness meditation. Look at the squirrels playing and the birds singing and the trees budding. This is a perfect time with spring, a beautiful time of year for you to enjoy nature. Just practice mindfulness as you're doing that. So many different ways. Practice, try, and whatever works for you, do more of that.
Thanks for sharing this positivity and your own experiences, Julie. What Julie mentioned, the Emergency Immunity Kit by Lee Holden, that is in the description. Click the link, go to the site, check it out. If it's for you, awesome. Join the list. I'm sure he sends out other breathing exercises and other things that you can do, or just begin with 1 minute a day. So before I ask you my final question that I'm going to start asking every guest, Julie, where can we find you and where can we connect with you right now?
Well, right now I'm on LinkedIn under Julieane Cooley, Juliane Cooley, and I believe Brandon has posted that link as well. I don't have a website yet, but that will be forthcoming. And if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see that advertised when it does come out, when I do start leading some classes and coming out with my material. But for now, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. We put Julie's LinkedIn profile right in the description below. And Julie, my last question for you is, and feel free to think about the answer to this, what is the change or the positive improvement that you would most love to see in the world during your lifetime?
Actually, that's an easy question. It's unconditional love. We all are that when we're born. I mean, if you look at babies, they don't look at the color of the skin of another baby. They don't have judgments. They just want to play. As they get a little older, they get a little more possessive. But when they're babies, they're just pure bundles of that innocence and that unconditional love. And if we all work to reframe and deprogram ourselves, I'd like to get back to that, especially now when we're so divisive. If somebody doesn't believe what we believe, oh, I unfriended 50 people today on Facebook, or they're fighting each other, trying to get the other person to believe what they want to believe. And that's not what it's about. It's about accepting people for who they are and accepting that diversity, because if everybody was like us, it would be boring. So accept people for who they are and show compassion and love. And that's what this world needs a lot of. And, the 60s, almost every song talked about that. And we have a long way to go, unfortunately. But the best thing we can do is show that ourselves. Be the change, as Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. You can't change another person as much as we would love to, even those that are dearest to us. You can't change them. So you have to change yourself. So start treating people with more compassion, more love, and fill yourself up with that too. That's really important. We're not taught to love ourselves and show compassion for ourselves. Start there and then show compassion for others, because we can't give what we don't have. So make sure you're full of that love and positivity, and then it's naturally going to overflow to other people. But that's what the world needs a lot of right now, is that love.
That is a beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences and your strategies with us today. I know it's going to help at least one person to start practicing this. I urge you, everyone listening, start with 1 minute of conscious mindfulness, conscious meditation, whatever it might be for you, whether it's walking or sitting or while you're eating or while you're on a nature walker or qigong, anything like that, whatever works for you. Start practicing it, because I believe that by all of us doing this, it's going to lead to the vision that Julie just described. Wow. So many awesome knowledge bombs were dropped on mindfulness and how you can use it to live a better life and improve your life in practically every single area. Julieane Cooley is absolutely incredible. She's a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for several years now, and this is just the beginning of a beautiful relationship, spreading awareness of mindfulness. And the number one way that you can help spread awareness when it comes to mindfulness is by practicing what we talked about. If you're just joining, go back to the beginning, check out the strategies we talked about how to use this in your life. And if you're wondering how you can do more, share the Be Better broadcast. Share this with a friend who might need this in their life. Share it on your Facebook. Share it on your social medias. It's the number one way you can support the show, but only share it if you found value. If this wasn't valuable, don't share it. But if it was, the only price of entry is share this with one person who really needs to hear it. Thank you so much for joining. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.